scripture reading that was for today, November 23rd, 2025, is Luke chapter 23, verses 33 through 43. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. And the people stood by watching, but the leaders scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It never takes long for people in my world to realize just how much I love Star Wars. Come by my office in a week or two if you don't believe me. I have 3 shelves dedicated for my Star Wars figures, just waiting for me to have the time to set them up. Now, 2 figures are already in place on my desk. They have kind of a place of honor. 2 of my heroes from the franchise, Princess Leia and Ahsoka. 2 strong women who stood up to the powers that be in order to do what was right. I have very strong opinions about Star Wars. I love the first 3, the original 3 episodes that came out. I tolerated the next 3, also known as prequels, and I cannot bear the last 3. I thought they were horrible, except for one scene. One scene in The Last Jedi, where Luke Skywalker confronts Kylo Ren. In this scene, Luke appears standing alone while Kylo Ren is safe inside an armored ship with a fleet of battle vehicles that dwarf a paleosaur. Ren has this whole fleet of vehicles and ships trained on Luke and orders them to fire on him, to hit Luke with everything they've got. When the firing stops, Luke emerges from this swirling debris, calmly flicks dust off his shoulder, and looks up at Ren's ship as if to say, "You don't own the Force." Great. Proving once again that Luke Skywalker is the GOAT of Jedis. This image came to my mind while I was thinking about today. The Sunday that we call Christ the King Sunday, or the Reign of Christ Sunday. It's a Sunday that's become problematic for us, particularly in the U.S., because one reason, we don't have kings. We don't know what it's like to be part of an actual physical kingdom where one person reigns over us and makes all the decisions, or we didn't. Which also makes it problematic this year, the whole No Kings movement. It's also problematic because we have a certain stripe of Christianity that is demanding a kingdom. The idea of the United States as a Christian theocracy has reared its ugly head, and it's getting plenty, if not all, the airtime. So how then can we celebrate or recognize a Sunday called Christ the King Sunday? With all this debris and ash swirling around us, can we calmly step out of it and say, "This is not our King. This is not our God. Who is our king then? And yes, I'm going to use the king language in this sermon for a reason. Who is our king? And what is his kingdom? We are reminded again of who Jesus was and is in Luke's account of the crucifixion. Luke gives us a very detailed account, actually, of those, quote, last days. Jesus is arrested under cover of darkness. He's beaten and mocked before he's brought before the council, which was comprised of chief priests and scribes. They bring him before Pilate and accuse him of perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. All of these accusations are false. Pilate tries to pass the buck, sends him to Herod, the puppet king placed on the throne by Rome. The accusations are repeated, and Herod and his soldiers also mock Jesus, and then they send him back to Pilate. Pilate says Jesus has done nothing wrong, but offers to have Jesus flogged to keep the peace. But the crowd shouts against this and calls for the release of a murderous insurrectionist, Barabbas, and for the crucifixion of Jesus. Pilate gives in, and Jesus is led away with two other criminals who had also been sentenced to death. And we are at today's passage, the actual crucifixion. I'm not going to go into the details of what death by crucifixion was like. It wasn't pretty. But I do want to note that crucifixions were very public deaths, executions. These three men are taken to a place called the Skull, which is thought to be a mountain outcrop that was shaped like a scroll. And they're crucified there, where everyone could see them, could hear every cry of pain. Now, Rome crucified people for a variety of reasons. We're not told what the other two criminals were guilty of. Some traditions say they were thieves. Others theorize that they were insurrectionists themselves. But the word for criminal could be translated as simply ne'er-do-wells. That's not helpful. But it does help to reveal that public execution by crucifixion was a weapon Rome used to keep people in line. All people had to do when entering the city was look up, see those hanging on crosses, to be reminded that Rome held the power and Rome would use it as it saw fit. Public executions draw a crowd. They always have. And so many would come to watch them die. Those who mourned them and those who mocked them. It's an added cruelty to public executions. There was no dignity, no respect found in this death. It was common for those dying to be verbally assaulted by the crowd. And that's what happens to Jesus. Mocking is almost too kind of a description for what was being done. People would shout the most vile and hateful things to those unfortunate souls that were crucified. In Jesus' case, this mocking includes the title that was given to him by his accusers, that he called himself a king. So they used this to further deride and discredit him. For those religious leaders, the designation of king is a blasphemous claim of a false Messiah pretender. As Jesus is a man who made himself a king. So that designation, King of the Jews, was nailed above his head as a political statement, not a theological one. It was put there to warn others who might be pretenders to the throne. People call out for him to save himself mockingly because they don't believe he could. They call out for it, as if they expect him to suddenly morph into Conan the Barbarian buffness, rip himself free of the cross, tearing it out of the ground, and if you'll pardon me using the expression, beating the crap out of everyone who had dared to harm, disrespect, or even disagree with him. It's an image that's very contrary to what we know about Christ the King. And yet it is this image that Christian nationalism has embraced. Christ as the warrior king, big, buff, apparently with no beard, carrying a flag in one hand and an AR-15 in the other, ready to take out anyone who's determined to be different, be that difference race, gender, faith, economic status, political affiliation, a different type of Christianity, anything that is viewed as wrong. But that's not who Christ is. It's not the king that is revealed in Luke's gospel or any of the New Testament for that matter. He's a king who can't help but show mercy. Even in the midst of absolute pain and humiliation, Christ offers mercy and forgiveness, calling on God to forgive them, the ones who mock him, the ones who hurt him, the ones who sentenced him to death on trumped up charges, the ones who lied, the one who betrayed, the one who denied. Everyone is encapsulated in that request. Forgive them. He shows mercy to the criminal who mocks him from his own cross, and the criminal who speaks up for him and asks to be with Jesus in his kingdom. He's a crucified king who looks nothing like the earthly concept of a king. He's a king who regards those we would overlook, the poor, the sick, the weak, the old, the young, the hungry, the sinners, and the criminals. He offers the criminal next to him a place with him, reminding us of how he welcomes those deemed unworthy by the powers that be. He doesn't surround himself with sycophants, but with those who have nothing to give, no power, no status, no wealth. He's a scarred king. God doesn't resurrect a perfect, no-flawed Jesus. The scars, the wounds, they're still there, and they'll never go away. Reminding us that we don't have to carve ourselves in some image of the perfect Christian, where we all look the same and we all look like we've been carved out of cream cheese. There's room with him for the flawed, the different, the scarred, the wounded. That's our king. And because the kingdom reflects the nature of the king, that's the kingdom too. It's a kingdom based in mercy and love, not in cruelty and hate. It's a kingdom so broad and expansive that it includes everyone, not limited to just a select few. It's a kingdom that doesn't look perfect, but is beautifully glorious in its diversity. It's a kingdom that doesn't sit high up on a lofty mountaintop, but is found in places of suffering, pain, in areas of neglect and oppression. That's our king, and that's his kingdom, and the kingdom we are called to be citizens of. And that means we cannot hide ourselves behind walls, hoping to ride out the storm of hate that is mockingly carrying before it a sign that reads, "This is our king." We have to step out and speak up in the face of the hate and bigotry that tries to use the cross as a weapon. We think we're powerless against it, but we're not. We can stand, even if it feels like we're standing alone. We can stand up while religious nationalism threatens us with everything it's got, which truthfully is not much. They can say we're going to hell, but they're not the king. They don't own the kingdom, and they can't make that call. So we can step out of the swirl of debris around us, calmly dusting off our shoulders and say, that is not our king. That is not our God. Your God who supports your rejection of refugees and immigrants, that's not our God. Your refusal to see the worth of every single human being, that is not our God. Your insistence that women should not be in ministry or any leadership role for that matter, that's not our kingdom. Your judgment of LGBTQ people and your exertion of power over anyone who is not like you, that is not the kingdom, and you don't own it. We know who our king is and what his kingdom, the kingdom, is like. It is full of love and mercy and compassion. It is full of light that shines through the darkness of despair and hate. And as citizens of it, we are called to proclaim that, to show that to those who have been ignored, overlooked, and rejected. We can step up to the crosses of hate and prejudice, rip the sign off that they have nailed up saying, this is not the king, and reclaim that title for the one who was rejected and crucified, for the one who showed mercy and showed us the way to live together in the kingdom. We can take that sign back and say to the world, Christ is the king. Amen.